A woman was in a warehouse when she saw something that left her completely shocked.
The beloved cat of the house owner had been brutally killed. But the most shocking part was that this wasn't done by a human, but by a robot. The robot had been created by a scientist named Aiden. He had lost his young son in an accident. In memory of his son, using his technical talent, Aiden built a robot and even gave it the same name, Rob1n. The moment he saw the robot's hands start to move on their own, he became deeply emotional. He accepted Rob1n as his own child, as if light had returned to his dark life. But Aiden had no idea that the machine had started thinking on its own. In fact, the robot had killed the cat because it began to feel that Adin's affection for the pet was growing stronger. Out of jealousy, the robot didn't want anything or anyone else to take Adin's attention away from it, so it eliminated the cat. The scene shifts. A boy named Leo, who had been in love with his girlfriend Lexi for the past 5 years, proposes to her. Lexi is overjoyed and hugs him, but she doesn't know that Leo is drowning in debt, and debt collectors are constantly watching his every move. Trying to change the subject, Leo tells Lexi he wants to introduce her to his only living relative, none other than Adin, his uncle. Soon, they both head to Adin's house. During the meeting, Adin shares that his memory had weakened after a car accident 2 years ago, and he could barely recognize Leo. Lexi helps Adin to his room. Meanwhile, the robot silently observes everything from an upstairs window. While sitting in the drawing room, Leo notices some old photographs of Adin hanging on the wall. Suddenly, a loud noise comes from the glass window behind him. Curious, he peeks through and sees a small childlike figure behind the curtains. But when he opens the door, no one is there. Returning inside, he notices something strange. Sitting quietly near the fireplace is a bizarre-looking robot. Lexi then knocked on the door 3 times, and when everyone came back in, they were stunned. Rob1n had vanished. Leo felt as if someone else was secretly hiding in the house. But the housemaid, Freya, reassured them that only 4 people were present in the house. A little while later, Adin retired to his room to rest, and Leo struck up a conversation with Freya. He admitted he always felt something strange about Rob1n's behavior. The next morning, Freya didn't show up for work, for the first time in years. Adin became concerned, and then he noticed something chilling. There were bloodstains on the robot's face. Sensing something was terribly wrong, he made up an excuse and took Rob1n to the warehouse. There, Adin ran a diagnostic on Rob1n and found torn pieces of Freya's clothing inside. Furious and shaken, he confronted Rob1n, asking if this was its doing, but the robot remained silent. Despite extensive searching, Adin found nothing more and returned, frustrated and worried. The next morning, when he went to the warehouse again to check on Rob1n, the robot was gone. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a piano coming from upstairs. When he reached the upper floor, he saw Rob1n standing in front of a mirror, blinking repeatedly, trying to imitate human behavior. Adin was stunned. How could the robot be functioning without any power? That night, Leo continued his secret search for the vault. This time, he ventured into the attic, where an old chest opened by itself. Inside were nothing but old toys, belongings of Adin's late son. Nothing of value. Just then, Adin walked in and stopped him. After calming down, Leo asked Adin about his son. Adin shared that he had been out of town when it happened and returned only to hear the devastating news. Some claimed his son died in a fire, others suspected suicide. But the truth remained unknown. Even the police couldn't confirm anything. Since the tragedy, Adin's memory had started to fade. A haunting question began to gnaw at Adin's mind. Was Rob1n truly just a robot? Or was his son, in some form, still alive? The next morning, 2 police officers arrived at Aiden's home. Freya's brother had reported her missing, deeply worried since she hadn't returned home in 2 days. Adin told the police he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. They informed him that Freya was last seen at the warehouse, waiting for a taxi. But according to the driver, she never showed up, and after waiting a while, he left. Adin kept repeating he didn't know anything. With no evidence, the police left the premises. But outside, Freya's brother waited silently. He slipped into the warehouse and began calling her number repeatedly. Once again, Adin confronted Rob1n. "Did you kill Freya?" he asked with a trembling voice. But the robot said nothing. Rob1n just blinked, again and again. Then, without a word, he picked up a pair of scissors and wrote a single word on a nearby surface. Odin read the word, and for a brief moment felt a strange sense of relief. But what Odin didn't know was that Leo had been secretly listening to the entire exchange from behind the door. Quietly, he stepped forward, trying to get a glimpse of the word Rob1n had written. Leo had always harbored doubts about the true story behind Rob1n's death. That night, he dove into the internet, digging through old blogs and forums for anything related to the case. That's when he stumbled upon a post by an old journalist mentioning a party from years ago. Leo immediately contacted the blogger. When the blogger found out that Leo was Odin's nephew, he opened up without hesitation and shared the horrifying truth. It all happened on Rob1n's 11th birthday. Odin had thrown a grand party in his son's honor. But due to a prank, Rob1n was locked in the basement for a while. When they brought him back up, something had changed. His behavior became strange, like he was no longer the same child. Suddenly, Rob1n turned violent and attacked everyone at the party. Nearly all the guests were killed. Only Aiden and that reporter survived. When Rob1n tried to attack his own mother, a shot rang out. Rob1n collapsed. The bullet, the blogger revealed, was fired by Aiden himself. To protect his name and reputation, Aiden had bribed the police to cover up the entire incident. Leo was left stunned. He couldn't believe what he had just learned. Could this all really be true? Meanwhile, Lexi confronted Leo angrily. She had seen his phone and discovered messages from loan collectors. Leo tried to explain that he was only trying to earn money for their future, but ended up drowning in debt. Now, he said, their only option was to steal something valuable from Odin's house. He promised Lexi that once things settled, they would start a new life together. That night, following their plan, they spiked Odin's coffee with sleeping pills. Within minutes, Odin was in a deep sleep. Around the same time, 2 police officers returned to Odin's home for a follow-up investigation. When no one answered the door, they began searching the property. The female officer made her way to the basement, where Freya had last been seen. There, she found the robot, its eyes glowing eerily. Curious, she approached it, but as she leaned in, the robot suddenly drove a sharp metallic object into her abdomen. She screamed and collapsed in agony. The robot then electrocuted her using a high-voltage device, killing her in a horrifying manner. Moments later, her partner arrived. As he opened the door, he was hit by the overwhelming smell of burnt flesh. He took out his torch and stepped inside, only to discover his colleague's charred corpse. Before he could react, Rob1n stabbed him too, then unleashed a burning flamethrower across his face. Meanwhile, Leo and Lexi were upstairs, rummaging through closets and searching for a safe. Odin, despite being unconscious, began to feel something unusual on the floor. Leo, curious, shifted a loose panel and uncovered a hidden basement trapdoor. His eyes lit up, and he climbed down eagerly. Lexi hesitated, but eventually followed him. Neither of them realized that every moment was being watched through the cold, unblinking eyes of the robot. As they entered the secret basement, they found shelves lined with liquor bottles. But Leo wasn't there for alcohol. He was hunting for treasure. Then they heard a faint sound behind them. They turned, but no one was there. Leo moved ahead. Lexi stayed back for a moment, scanning the area once more. And when she turned again, there it was, the blood-soaked robot, standing silently, directly in front of her. Lexi screamed and ran for her life, eventually stumbling back into Leo's arms. Desperate and terrified, they kept running through the dark corridors of the hidden basement until they spotted what looked like an old cabinet with a small locked box inside. Their fear momentarily gave way to hope. Fueled by adrenaline, Leo quickly began trying to open the box. Then he remembered. Odin often used his son Rob1n's birth date as a password. He entered the date, and with a soft click, the box opened. But the moment they looked inside, their hearts sank. It was empty. No cash, no jewelry, nothing. And now, with their lives in danger, they had gained absolutely nothing. Tears welled up in Lexi's eyes. Suddenly, a sharp blade slashed across her neck. She collapsed instantly, lifeless, blood pooling beneath her. Leo barely had time to grieve. The robot was still there, and coming straight at him. He grabbed a metal rod and swung it wildly, striking the robot. But it wasn't enough. The robot picked up a jagged piece of glass and struck Leo across the head. He blacked out. When Leo regained consciousness, he found himself tied to an old wooden chair, right in the same basement where Robin had once been locked away. His head throbbed, and his hands were tightly bound. Then the robot began to speak. Blades slashed across her neck. She collapsed instantly, lifeless, blood pooling beneath her. Leo barely had time to grieve. The robot was still there, and coming straight at him. He grabbed a metal rod and swung it wildly, striking the robot. But it wasn't enough. The robot picked up a jagged piece of glass and struck Leo across the head. He blacked out. When Leo regained consciousness, he found himself tied to an old wooden chair, right in the same basement where Robin had once been locked away. His head throbbed, and his hands were tightly bound. Then the robot began to speak.